Well, my question is to the Minister for Women, Senator Gallagher. I note this is Women's Health Week, and I have noted a number of Labor senators mention this important occasion while talking about the government's work to promote women's health. I also note that women's health, safety, privacy and basic rights are being eroded in Australians' courts thanks to the Gillard Labor government's change to the Sex Discrimination Act 1984, which removed the definition of women and men. Minister, what measures is the government taking to ensure women's health, safety, privacy and basic rights are being protected by trans activism?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, President. And I thank Senator Hanson for the question and for acknowledging the work that the Albanese Labor government has been doing in all of the areas that she's outlined, in women's health, in women's safety, in access to skills and training, into economic independence. That is the approach that we've been bringing to it. In relation to the questions that Senator Hanson has raised, our job here is to make sure that we are in health, in women's safety, in economic security, in good pay for jobs, in being able to work extra hours, in investing in early childhood education and care, is that those policies support everybody. They support the whole economy. Gender inequality has been a feature of our country and a feature of our economy for too long. And it's not about one person getting a set of rights around another person. It's about addressing areas of inequality and driving broader equality across the economy so that everyone benefits. And that is what we've seen from
Senator Hanson.
My question goes to the basics of my question. I said about safety, privacy and basic rights. The minister has not touched on that whatsoever, and I didn't mention anything about what they're doing.
Thank you, Senator Hanson. The minister is being relevant to your question. Minister, please continue.
Thank you. Well, I certainly heard Senator Hanson outlining a few of the areas that we've been working on, and we have been working on it. We do think that areas of women's health have been left unaddressed for too long. To not list a modern contraceptive pill for the last 20-odd years, to not list new menopause treatments for the last 30 years, that is a problem. And it does need a government that's prepared to invest in it. In relation to the question you have around the Sex Discrimination Act, which was in your first question, the Sex Discrimination Act makes it unlawful to discriminate on the basis of a range of protected attributes, including sex and gender identity. The government is not proposing to change that.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson, first supplementary.
Women's health and safety is particularly at risk from the intrusion of biological males in women's sport, and this has been acknowledged by the new president of the International Olympics Committee, Kirsty Coventry, in her push for a blanket ban on transgender women from female categories at the Olympics. Does the government support a ban on transgender athletes competing in female categories at future Olympics?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Hanson for that question, and I respond in the same way I've responded as she's raised this in a number of times over the years, where she's sought to demonise transgender people across this country, is that is a matter that the sports organisations deal with. They deal with it appropriately as the experts in that area. Our approach here, and some of the issues you raise about in my area of women's policy, the issues you raise have not been raised with me as Minister for Women by all of the range of stakeholders I deal with on a day-to-day basis around addressing women's policy and about driving gender equality. That's the position this government takes. It's the position we've taken when you've asked me before, and it will be the position that we take in the future.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hanson, second supplementary.
Today, One Nation senators proudly signed a pledge to protect women's rights in Australia at the request of Women's Speak Tasmania. Minister, will the government acknowledge the Gillard government's change to the Sex Discrimination Act is threatening Australian women's access to female-only spaces and female-only sports and directly impacting the health and well-being of Australian women?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, Senator Hanson. In terms of issues that have been raised with me, and I'm not sure if that organisation you have spoken to have raised them with me. I don't recall that they have. We don't have any plans to change the Sex Discrimination Act. We believe in equality for all. We believe in respect and treating people respectfully, whatever their gender identity. That is something I think those opposite used to support as well, though I'm not sure that they continue with that position. And that's the approach that I bring to women's policy. I'm about driving gender equality. I want every individual across this country to be treated equally, regardless of the way that they identify. That is what I want, and that is what this government is focused on, whether it be in health, in education, in women's safety, in fighting against domestic and family violence. All of those areas, that is the focus, and that's how it will remain.
Minister.
Well, I rise to take note of answers to your questions, so I asked of Senator Gallagher. Changes to the Sex Discrimination Act by the Gillard government in 2013 have created a legal minefield for our courts and gravely threatened rights that generations of Australian women have fought for. This highlights the critical importance of writing objective laws to ensure they are not so wildly open to interpretation. Legal definitions should not be subjective or ambiguous, or else Australians are unable to conduct themselves with certainty they are within the law. As reported by the Australian newspaper last month, the danger of very subjective amendments to the SDA has been highlighted by Sal Grover's appeal against the federal court judgment she had indirectly discriminated against a trans woman. Janet Albiston rightly asked, how can a person know about another person's sex or gender identity if the law plots an ambiguous scale? That's because the SDA doesn't define sex like it used to. It does attempt to define gender identity, but this definition is ridiculous. The gender-related identity, appearance or mannerisms or other gender-related characteristics of a person, whether by way of medical intervention or not, with or without regard to the person's designated sex at birth. In Australia, it's apparent a man can just identify as a woman and the SDA will recognise him as a woman. This is an appalling law that helps trans activists tread all over the rights that women have fought hard to achieve for decades. And that's why One Nation aims to restore objective biological definitions of women in the SDA to protect women's rights, safety, health and privacy. Let me say, the Labor Party and the Greens and everyone, you protect women and quantify it when you are selecting your female candidates. You actually fight for women's pay gap. You actually fight for domestic violence for women, but not in sports, change rooms, safe spaces and toilets. You're